Welcome to this week's episode of Lifts, episode 28. I'm feeling a little bit aching today, Mo. I've been doing this kind of band-based workout. I'm trying to sort of look and feel a little bit younger, and I think it's actually starting to work.
You've been talking about the resistance bands now for a few months. I'm still not there yet. I'm also sore for an entirely different reason. I don't know if this is a good idea or a bad idea, but we'll be getting to this topic in a few minutes. But Peloton released this New York City Marathon simulation run. So it's the entire course. It's 150 minutes. So I thought, you know what? What the heck? It's a Sunday. It's kind of raining outside. I'm just going to go do this thing on the treadmill. I've never run longer than 10 miles on the treadmill before. I stopped at 14. If I finished the whole thing, it would have been 18. And it was an experience. I will leave it at that.
I'm impressed. Like, how long are you on the treadmill for? That must have taken some discipline just to stay on there for that long.
2 hours. So it's 2 hours.
Yeah.
I mean, typically, if I did a 14-mile run outside, it takes me about an hour and 45 minutes. So I went a little bit slower. But the cool thing about this is that one, the way they filmed the course was actually really, really nice. If you've never done the New York City Marathon before and you want to experience it, they had the crowds there, and then the elevation actually changes to match the marathon course. It was a really good experience. I was on it for 2 hours, but it didn't feel like 2 hours. So at some point, in a few weeks, maybe a couple of months, I do want to give it a shot again and see if I can finish it. I will come back on here and I will let you all know.
Well, talking about kind of motivating people to exercise, we've got an interesting guest on today.
We have a great guest on today, Bruce Smith, the CEO of Hydrow. Bruce and I have become business partners, friends. I've gotten to know him at a personal level. He's an industry leader. Really excited to have him on. Bruce, thank you for coming on this week's episode of Lifts.
So delighted to be here. And massive 2 hours on a treadmill. I do 2 hours on the rowing machine. And just getting that zone 2, those minutes in, Peter Attia says that you can do it all at once and it has that positive impact. It's a lot easier than running for 2 hours. It's just, you hammer that cartilage in your knees. I don't know how that cartilage is doing in your knees, Mo, but that's a lot.
I don't want to know. I really don't want to know, but we've got some really exciting news about Hydrow and you, Bruce, to talk about. And by the time this episode's released, that is going to be out. But before we do that, for those that are living under a rock, I want to give a quick credential of who you are, Bruce, and just a brief intro. Bruce Smith is the founder of Hydrow, the leading connected rower that brings the on-water experience of rowing straight to your home. As a lifelong entrepreneur, rower, and coach, Bruce has dedicated his career to helping others experience the power of the sport at all levels. As a U.S. national team coach, he led his team to medal at the 2015 World Championships and worked to create widespread access to rowing as a former executive director of Community Rowing, Boston's first public rowing club. Bruce founded Hydrow to capture this unique experience of on-water rowing and make it universally accessible, helping people everywhere feel more connected to one another and live healthier lives on a daily basis. Hailing from Canada, Bruce makes his home in Cambridge, Massachusetts, just blocks away from the Charles River. And Bruce, I've sat in your office where you're at today many times in Boston. What is it like in Boston today?
It is amazing. So that is a very nice introduction. It sounds suspiciously like our PR person, Michael Braun, wrote that. But it's an incredible sunny day and spring is finally here. I was at a dinner celebrating this thing that we're going to talk about last night, and I walked down Comm Ave in the dark, and the apple blossoms are in full bloom. So you're walking through Boston with this incredible apple blossom smell. It is a great place to live right now.
Boston's a wonderful city. Well, we've got some big news, a lot of changes happening to Hydrow, which I think is going to be transformational as it relates to the connected fitness industry and our industry in general. I'm going to hand it off to you to talk a bit about what you've been working on for the last couple of years.
So we really believe that fitness is getting better. Like overall, like fitness 20 years ago, fitness 10 years ago was not as effective as fitness today. And that's a result of a lot of things. There's some technological changes that have made access to fitness easier for people. And, Peloton blazed the way for this connected fitness experience in your home. But I think what's so interesting is that the choices that people make around modalities is not necessarily like they don't make the best choices for fitness necessarily. So if you have half an hour work out your whole body. And so that's why we started with the rowing machine. We really believe that that's it's one of the most efficient ways to improve your VO2 max. And then the other key element of that is strength training. So the two things that you really, really need physically to be healthy, and of course there are more things to health than just the physical, but the two physical things you need are an aerobic device, something that improves your VO2 max or helps you improve your VO2 max, and a strength device. And so there's been this revolution, Tonal blazed the way with this idea of digital resistance and the idea that you can change the resistance within each repetition. The world doesn't know how great that is because it is efficient in the same way that rowing is a really efficient way to exercise your VO2 system. Variable resistance, variable digital resistance is a way to improve the efficiency of your strength workout. And we have just announced that we haven't announced yet, but by the time this airs, we will have announced that we've acquired Speede, which is a digital resistance company in Chicago. This is the one. This is a genuinely step function improvement in digital resistance. And we couldn't be more excited about combining these two, we think they're the two best modalities into a single platform. Just so exciting.
Actually, Mo, you and I met there. I think the first time I met you, Mo, was actually at their event in Los Angeles. I think they were early stages of pitching the product. We bumped into each other, and I went down there with a friend of mine, Pete Holman, and tried out the unit in its very, very early stages. But I was instantly impressed. I'm someone who loves to strength train. What I could kind of see. And I think these were the first people that had delivered it in a way. I don't know too much about the technology, and I'm aware that to some extent parts of this has been around for a while. But I think the way they packaged it and delivered that, I could kind of see that this is going to be a big shift to the fitness industry in terms of how people strength train and how you can actually get a much more effective workout than what you can do with traditional resistance machine.
And Matthew, what you said about bands, like that's what this is, only like it's next level because it's tuned specifically for you. So you're not constrained to changing rubber bands. It's actually tuned specifically for your muscle to provide maximal resistance at each point in the repetition. So it loads the muscle optimally in a way that really nothing else can. Like people have tried to approximate it with chains and with negatives and with spotting, but this really is next level. It's really exciting.
I interviewed a gentleman called Dr. John J. Christian. He's an interesting character. We had him on the podcast, and he talked about variable resistance training, specifically with bands. But I did learn a lot about that, and I think according to him, there's a lot of fairly new research that's come out to really explain the effectiveness of this way of training over anything else that's actually out there. So that was the reason why I've started to use bands, although as having a machine that can do all the different setups. I'm basically getting bands and hooking them up at different resistances and different exercises. But having this machine that can do that automatically, quickly and seamlessly, I would have thought would be something I'd love to try.
Yeah.
And Bruce, I just want to go one step deeper too. So you've acquired them technology that you talked about, this pro device. What is your approach towards making it more accessible? And how do you think this is different than a Tonal or a Vitruvian, or even what Peloton is doing for strength?
Yeah. So there are 2 or 3 points that I think are important to understand. So Speede on the top end for the professional model, which will be for gyms, has an extraordinary range of weight resistance. So it goes up to 1,000 pounds of resistance, which is really fabulous. And if you're a professional athlete, if you're a D1 athlete, if you're a football player, if you're training for hockey, whatever it is, getting those complex hinge motions in at the right weight is really important. But that's way outside the civilian use case. Most people need 200 or 300 or 400 pounds of resistance maximally, like at the maximum point. So we are also taking that same technology, and it's fully prototyped now with a consumer model that will be priced just around $2,000. So there's some key differences. I'm a big fan of Tonal. We have a Tonal here in the office. We play with it a lot, and they really pioneered this space, and Ollie made something I think really cool. The price points, it's a lot, and you got to screw it onto the wall. And that is like, for a lot of consumers, it's just a no-go. So both Speede units are made to sit on the floor. and be extra super safe and very accessible. And I think that price point is also critical. That's one element. The other element, I think that nobody has fully cracked the code on, and I was talking with Scott Egbert about this. He owns a 25 or 30 fitness stores, and it's the integration of the experience with the hardware and the software. And nobody has, we believe we've done it with Hydrow. We have this NPS score in the high 80s. People really, really love the experience. And the rowing machine we built, it really is, we believe it's head and shoulders above sort of your standard run-of-the-mill rowing machine because of the experience. And it's taking that same ability to integrate the experience of lifting and the direction that you need from a really good trainer, using the data that's coming back into the machine, making sure that the UX UI is incredibly seamless, and making sure that the hardware is second to none, and that the resistance you feel is incredibly smooth and reliable every single time. And that's what Speede really delivers, I think, in a special way. And I'm a big fan of Vitruvian. We have some Speediance machines here in the office as well. All of our machines will come with a screen. And so that screen is going to be in a place that's accessible. You don't have to bend over. You don't have to figure out how to wedge your phone into the corner. It's going to be right there, and it will provide you that feedback and that seamless experience. And putting all of that together, we think, is our superpower, and not deviating from the North Star, most efficient and best. And so that when you're buying something from Hydrow, you are getting the most efficient and best exercise, whether it's for VO2 max or strength. So that sounds a little bit too much like an infomercial maybe, but that's what we're aiming at. We believe that's what people really want in their homes.
Well, I think one of the ultimate goals that you've been talking about, and I hope we could talk about this. If not, we can edit it out. But you have a vision of potentially taking Hydrow public at some point. And another public company who's a competitor of yours has been in the news very, very recently. As of last week, they just released their first earnings. And by some indicators, there were positive takeaways in their earnings. They had some free cash flow for the first time, but a lot of it was really proving a lot of headwinds, including the departure of Barry McCarthy, their embattled CEO in many ways, who was brought on to turn the ship around, clearly was not successful in doing that. And also they announced a 15% reduction in workforce, which amounted to about 400 people. If you could kind of sum it up in a couple of words, what do you think the issue with Peloton is right now?
The main problem is you put a finance guy in charge of a product company and let them run it with a model that doesn't respect the magic of what's happening. And so I think Peloton is a magical company. They have this amazing brand. My attorney, at Sidley, loves his Peloton. He uses it every morning.
I love my Peloton.
Talked about, people they still love their Peloton, but the magic is the combination of hardware and software and content. It is not a content company. It is the combination of those three things. And I think something happens to people in business school or something where they're like, wait, you can't be a content and a hardware company. RCA was bad. That's not the case. RCA was pretty magical when it launched. And because it's fitness, it's a special thing, you need a device. And if you don't recognize that it's that ecosystem and that it needs to be a wellness hub in the home, you're going to lose your way. And so Peloton kind of I don't know that they ever had a North Star. I think it was in some cases better lucky than good. But the truth is you got to respect your North Star, which is the combination of those three things that delivers the exceptional value. And when you start to lean too hard on the content or too hard on the digital, you invite churn, you invite competitors. There's no more barrier to entry. Bear hug that footprint in the home and make it the best place you can be in your house. And I don't think it's hard to fix. Honestly, I was reading a subreddit post, somebody who was detailing how they could run Peloton with 38 people, and they're not wrong. We run Hydrow with less than 100 people. And that's full content, full hardware production, 3 products in the market in 6 years. And it's very, very doable. I don't know. They have a lot of people and a lot of overhead, and they haven't cleaned up from the COVID overhang yet. It's just not ready yet. It is going to be a great company. I'd love to take it private and fix it up and put it back on the market. I think whoever does that, if they do it with that North Star, they can deliver extraordinary value for consumers and make a huge bucket full of money.
Is that something, like you've got rowing, strength, cycling, is that sort of
I
fit the
know
portfolio?
I'd have to eat my words because I do make fun of the half body exercise company like quite a bit, but I think what they do is amazing. Like they have 3 million customers. Like that's an extraordinary accomplishment. And there's no reason why, Mo and I have had this conversation, there's no reason why that shouldn't walk right up to the edge and into the healthcare industry, because that's, that idea of whole health, like it's so critical. And all movement is good. Even, I'll say it out loud, even biking is good. So,
Well,
yeah,
if you
so I
do
think
have
great
plans to
opportunity.
take it private, you're not alone.
I know, right?
Looks like
Yeah,
there's a company
yeah,
that potentially might have made a bid or talking to Peloton about at this
yeah.
point taking it private. I think at today's check, the company's valuation was about 1.4 billion. What do you think needs to happen for someone, you or someone else, to potentially take it private?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a long shot dark horse candidate. I saw it somewhere else in another, like I think in LinkedIn, that somebody was like Iqbal for president, or CEO of Peloton, which I would second. So I don't think it's hard. I think you strip out the workforce. I know it's tough for the people working there. I've lived through it. The company is stronger. We did a big riff at Hydrow. We went from 200 people to 100 people. Peloton has to go from, I think they're at 2,800. They need to go to about 500 people plus their retail employees, from what I can figure. And that'll be an incredibly strong company, focus on profitability, cut way back on marketing, and get a 40-person growth team in there. That is 4 or 5 visionary software engineers, 1 visionary product leader, 2 product managers, and about 30 engineers to implement. And then you just A/B test the crap out of that thing to figure out how network effect works and how to get that complete data picture so that you can personalize in a meaningful way and actually change people's lives. That's all it takes. Like it's like, not to say that it's not hard, but I think it's obvious to me anyway, having spent 6 years thinking about this. I don't know if you think the same thing, but to me, it's like pretty straightforward.
How are you seeing the future of this space? Because clearly it makes sense for the way you've explained it from a consolidation perspective. My guess is there's a lot of similarities between what you're doing with Speede, Hydrow, and Peloton. You could potentially have sort of 3 or 4 modalities. Like where do you see the space going, and how is the investment community looking at it? Because certainly a lot of people have had their fingers burnt over the last few years. Are you seeing a renewed confidence, and do you see this potential new model where you have that kind of team that you're describing, and they can potentially kind of go between or have an oversight over 2 or 3 different products like you're describing?
Yeah, it's inevitable. I know there are really smart people who are thinking about taking what we do on the machine and putting that together into an experience and figuring out the extrinsic motivators and taking all of the data from your watch, from your tracker, from your ring, from your phone, from your computer, from your heart rate monitor, and putting that into a package and creating a picture that then informs your healthcare. And I think that is an absolute inevitability. It's, saying it sounds pretty easy. It's obviously really hard to get it right. And I think the hardest part is the behavioral science, because that is, it's a soft science, and what really constitutes network effect, and how do you really create incredibly strong adherence. Like that's where the magic happens. A couple people have landed there by accident, like Peloton. They just took SoulCycle and put it in your house. Yep. Totally worked. That's not going to last forever. Like you need more strategies for strong adherence. Like you need like 30 or 40 strategies, and you need to know which strategy works for which person. We just had a visit. BJ Fogg, who wrote Tiny Habits, came to Hydrow University here last Friday. And he has a Hydrow, and his partner uses it a lot. He uses it a lot. So we're fortunate. We have a fan with BJ, and he's deep into that world. But it's just elbow grease in the end. Like you understand your principles, understand your North Star, and A/B test the crap out of it. And our industry right now has been squeezed so hard with the flip in the overall access to capital, that it's hard to imagine that kind of innovation happening. But 2-3 years from now, this will all be a bad memory. We've had some profitable months at Hydrow. We are right on the line, and pretty soon we will be back to growth, and building those products that cross that divide and go from the fitness industry to the whatever it is, $7 trillion healthcare industry, which I'm super excited about. And I think it's going to help people. Like they'll feel better. I hope that's the intention.
Well, I think, look, getting attention and branding and access. I mean, as CAC has gone up, a lot of people have tried different ways to acquire customers. Our next story talks about Cristiano Ronaldo launching a new wellness app, and it seems to be going okay. But this kind of follows Chris Hemsworth. I know, Bruce, you've had Kevin Hart at least at some point as a
Mhm.
creative director of Hydrow. My personal opinion in celebrity built brands, and I think this could be different. I don't want to generalize this by any means, but people do not always turn, like they may turn to celebrities for maybe where they eat, what kind of clothes they wear, but healthcare and wellness is such a personal endeavor. I'm not so sure, I'm not really convinced if celebrity endorsement of a product, if a celebrity comes out with a product, that it might have an initial spike, but it's going to be very hard to retain that customer unless you do the things that you've been talking about for the last 20 minutes or so. What are your thoughts on this app?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm a huge fan of people getting into the fitness game, but ultimately, like, it's not fads. Like, fitness isn't a fad. Like, you got to do it for your whole freaking life. How are you going to get motivated to do it for your whole life? And celebrities have like a shelf life of a particular period of time, and it doesn't ultimately work. I loved working with Kevin Hart. It was really great. He's still involved with the company. He still answers our phone calls when we need something. He delivers, and he's one of the most creative humans on the planet. And he was really instrumental in helping us kind of like break the incredible monotony around rowing and say like, oh, rowing's for everybody. Um, that said, like the long-term value here has got to be true extrinsic motivation and reliable, good information about how to live better. And like Peter Attia's podcast is, to my mind, one of the most revolutionary things out there because it gives you access to really great science. And as a national team coach, when I was training people, like there was just so much bad science, like just extraordinary. Like people don't know how to take care of themselves. They don't know how to exercise. And they still don't know. Even with all of the YouTube stuff out there, there's no curated, trustworthy source, So
Well, I'm going to move on to the next story. Mo put it in the chat, and I was actually we've got two next stories, and we've talked a little bit longer on one of them, but I found the link here that Scott's pulled up, and this was something that Mo and I sent backwards and forwards. We had a little bit of a chat yesterday. It's from something called Science Daily. I've never heard of Science Daily before, but it's basically referring to some research that's out there that seems to have given conclusive proof that very immediate incentives after exercise can lead to sustained increase in activity. And the reason I thought it was relevant to talk about this is there's a number of different ways. If this research is solid, which it seems though it is, it's thinking about how that can be done in a number of levels. Whether you're a health club operator, whether you're a trainer, and I guess even more, or it suits a lot better being able to use technology to be able to assess what's happening and then figuring out how to provide that feedback. And I suppose you could extend that to some form of even gamification. So just curious to get your thoughts. Is this something that you've read about, Bruce, or is this something that you build into some of your technology?
Yeah, and there are a bunch of companies that have like Burn comes to mind. Like people who have tried to incentivize effectively, and the trouble with humans is they change a lot. They change their on the one hand, Shakespeare's still relevant, so we don't change that much. But on the other hand, your tastes and predilections change, pretty regularly. Like, you love ice cream as a kid, and then you love salty snacks a little bit later, and then you really enjoy a glass of beer, but then you switch to vodka, and then you switch to no alcohol at all because that's, like things change. And so there isn't a single answer. To me, the magic is in understanding the different cohorts and having all of the answers and having all of those answers available for each of those cohorts. And that is what's possible if you can use AI effectively and LLMs and actually build those models. And just not to go back to Peloton, but they have 3 million customers. that is a great database to work with where you can actually get to meaningful segmentation and meaningful personalization. Hydrow's there, and we are on that road. We have a few 100,000 users and slightly more. We just passed 1 million accounts a couple of months ago. So we're working on that. Overall, I think the disruption that is going to happen when we figure out that segmentation and that those extrinsic motivators is just going to be extraordinary. And I think it's going to be one of those things where we look back and we're like, wow, boy, we really were beating our heads against the wall for a long, long time.
Yeah, I definitely cannot agree more. I think you're spot on in that the levers that we need to motivate us and incentivize us to do the hard thing, which I want to get to here in a minute, does change and does evolve depending on where we are in our life cycle. But here's what we do know from a physiological perspective: as human beings, we are gravitated more towards watching Netflix, sitting on the couch, and eating potato chips because that's where our brain wants to go. Our brain wants to go to comfort. We want to store fat. We want to move. We want to do the least amount of work and store as much fat as possible in the event that there is danger ahead. In a modern society, we have all the comforts in the world. So, how do you take that kind of person and how do you motivate them? And there's been attempts, and there is some science. And this article reminds me of a couple of things. One, the pedometer was first invented in Japan. It was a Japanese invention. But then Ghent University did a study where they looked at 3 cohorts. They looked at one cohort and said, put a pedometer on them and just go and just walk about your regular day. And that group did okay. They had a second group where they gave them a goal of 10,000 steps. And this is where 10,000 steps for Fitbit came from. They had a third group that said, we're going to give you a goal of 10,000 steps, and we're going to put you in a community of people that are all achieving this goal together. Take a guess which group performed the best. The third group. So we know that if we have a goal, one, we have to be measured. So what is measured is managed. That's something that an old mentor of mine from my past life taught me. So having a unit of measure of some capacity is so important. I know, Bruce, you are very particular about that.
Mm-hmm.
Number two, setting a goal. So just having that unit of measure, but not giving yourself a goal. It's true in business. This is why we have KPIs, and it's true in personal goals as well. And the third thing is accountability, and how you might do that varies by people, but community is certainly important. And I think, with this article kind of talking about, adults with heart disease who receive daily reminders or incentives to become more active, increase their steps. That's nothing new. I mean, I'm glad to see more studies come out that kind of talks about this, but it's nothing that like we in the fitness industry haven't known for a while. What's interesting though is that brands are now trying to leverage gamification in so many different ways, and they're trying to achieve holistic and overall wellness. And we've got this next article here around Equinox, and Equinox just launched a $40,000 a year product. And this is if you include their memberships and everything else around it. And they're taking wellness to what they're calling an F1 or Formula One level. It sounds outrageous because it is. $40,000 a year focused on that. And I actually did a post about this, and it had me kind of bring out and tabulate my expenses and what I spend in fitness a year. I spend about $2,400, all in, literally, because I don't have a trainer, right? Because I'm around amazing people like the two of you. I'm well informed. I make my own plans, and I already own my equipment and own all my wearables. So I don't really spend that much on my fitness, but I'm able to lead a high performance lifestyle. And Bruce, from your perspective, how important do you think? I mean, you talked about whole health a few minutes ago. Do you think it's getting more mainstream, and how important do you think it is that brands embrace whole health living?
I think it matters a lot which segment of the market you're going after. So there are a group of people, VCs among them, probably like 90% of VCs are in this group, who are super, super engaged and are prime candidates for that product from Equinox. I think that it's an incredibly affluent set of people, and they are pushing the boundaries, and they're taking rapamycin, they're getting 19 blood tests every 3 months. They have a 30 or 40 or 50 pill regimen daily. I'm kind of in the middle. Like, I just installed a sauna in my house because I believe the data around longevity, and I don't want to die of a stroke or heart attack or be incapacitated in that way, like before I'm like 75 or 80. So I'm really committing to that idea. And that was a big investment for our family. And I think overall, like, that information is incredibly valuable, but it doesn't need to cost that much because the vast majority of the population is going to benefit massively from one more unit of extrinsic motivation. So you need 10 units of extrinsic motivation to work out. Most people have 6, 7, 8, 9, and they need that one more unit of motivation. And that, honestly, is cheap and easy and scalable. And that's what we're really about.
Well, Bruce,
unlock that.
we're almost at time here. So maybe with that, why don't I kick off some final thoughts on this episode and say, if that you had that 1 unit of extrinsic motivation additional, what do you think that would be?
It's other people, to my mind. It is connecting to the right other people. And it's straight out of video games. It's why video games are, 100 times bigger than movies these days. It's because they understand that, and we need to port that information into our world. It's right there for the taking.
Okay, so with community, and then Matthew, any key takeaways from this week?
Yeah, it's been a culmination of conversations we've had over the last few weeks, and Bruce has certainly helped shape this in my mind. I think it's a time where companies need to be thinking less about short-term, quarterly, and even annual performance, and to make the bets on the future is having a much longer time horizon. I think many companies are looking at it, and some of this is still some of the developments, particularly when it's technology based, longevity as well. Is some of these things don't necessarily start to take shape if you have too much of a shorter time horizon, and that, I think that's quite difficult to do. But in some ways, it's almost making a decision on what are some of the foundations that you're going to now build your business on, and technology is clearly going to be part of that, so that when the market takes shape in whatever form it's going to be, you're already a few years ahead of everybody else. And that's, you and I, Mo, have a lot of conversations about this as well. But I think what Bruce has said is sort of starting to crystallize that in my mind. We're planning, planning for the next 10 years as opposed to the next sort of 12 to 24 months. What about you, Mo?
And that's really important. And look, we had our all hands meeting today, and I put one word up to kick it off for our May all hands, which was transformation. And we are in a state of transformation right now. Our company is, the industry is, the consumer is. That's the word to be thinking about. And I would say that, the one takeaway I have for this week is, and if anything we've learned just in the last 5 days, right? We talked about Peloton CEO stepping down, them laying off people, and then here we have Hydrow and Bruce going the other direction. Do not get stuck on one story or one thing. Take a macro view of the industry and put your focus there, because it's very easy to be running down a rabbit hole and feeling too good about yourself or too bad about yourself, depending on your perspective. But I think from a macro standpoint, the industry is moving forward. It is evolving. You just have to make sure that you're able to move with it.
Well, we're going to wrap up there. Bruce, thank you so much for your time today. We'd love to have you back on again when you're able to share a little bit more about what's going on. But it sounds very interesting. Mo, thank you. Thanks for listening. If you're getting any value from these Lifts episodes, please share it with 1 or 2 other people so that we can get this out to a few more people. And if you've got any ideas or suggestions about content, then we've got a Lifts LinkedIn page, so you can leave any comments there. I hope you enjoyed the episode, and thank you very much for listening.